Further discussion on Python integration with the GUI tool Blender. Okay, so we'll proceed on it. So this is Linux Mint. Okay, so the scenario is can we kind of connect a Python script that would be running from the outside the Blender. So that is the scenario. Generally, script is provided through the Blender. So if I open Blender, and then if I open a terminal, okay, so Python support is available in the Blender, and so like this is the default shapes we get, and we can see scripting on top right, and if I click on the scripting and then I can do new, and then we can type in the code. So like import bpy and then whatever we want, and then we can see something happening in the graphics. Now what we want is that we can execute code from the terminal, and when we execute the code from the terminal, then it would happen in the Blender. So idea is that if I execute code through the console, then I should see the things happening in the Blender application. So no need to go inside that and then typing and executing. So everything should happen from the outside. So that is the idea. Okay, so we have made a presentation on this. So kind of in the shape of article. Okay, so someone can go to medium.com, and then we have just type minhinc, medium.com / and @ minhinc. So we have account there now. Okay, so someone can kind of he can sit and he can read it through. Okay, so non-blocking GUI while serving blocking external IO. So the way we discussed, the problem with the Blender is that okay, so Blender supports only in application scripts. So I can type a script here and then I can execute it like clicking on the execute button. But here we can run a server Python script, and server Python script would receive the request from the outside, and then whatever the request it receives in a form of a file or a string, that it would execute. So that is the idea. So it is something like, okay, so like Blender application is running, and it is running a Python code, and some Python client process, it connects with the Blender, and Blender would execute the Python code. So that is the concept. Okay, so Python program, Python client process, it executes a Python program. I mean, it reads a Python program. It sends the Python program to the Blender, and Blender receives the Python program as a string and passes it to the Python program that is running inside the Blender, and it executes it and it shows the output. So that is the kind of what we need, and that is the design. Okay, so further to it, like a Python client process, it connects with Blender through socket, and Blender running Python server process, and it receives the request string in the form of many Python programs, and those programs are being run one by one by the Python server process. So up to here it is nice the way we discussed, but beyond this there are problems like Python server, it's blocking. So if we talk about socket API, then we'll create a server socket at the Blender, and server socket, if I say just to kind of accepting a connection, then it would block forever. So if it blocks forever, then Blender would not move, so we cannot see Blender anything happening. Okay, so we kind of placed a design. So the design what we discuss here is there will be a kind of, so since Blender is a GUI tool, so there is a event loop manager in the Blender. So if there is an event loop manager, then it processes the events. Okay, so we'll register a timer callback, so timer event. Okay, so once we register a timer event to the event system, then in the timer callback, when timer callbacks happens, then we will use select as a IO multiplexer, and it would be non-blocking. And if we kind of if IO is green lighted, then we do the processing and return 0. Okay, so if IO is green lighted, perform the task if IO is green lighted, and if IO is not green lighted, means there is no connection from the client, then anyway it would return. So we are talking about okay, in the solution we are talking about two things. One, IO happens through a socket, and second thing is that the processing would happen in timer event callback. So there are two things that we have discussed. So I think it is more clear if we go down and we have placed kind of other images. Okay, so a flow chart is like a Python server that is running inside the Blender. So Python server would be waiting for the Python client and Python client to connect. So Python script is read by the Python client, and then it is passed to Python server, and Python server would wait in the select, and if there is a new connection, then anyway it has registered for the timer event and the timer event callback. So it would call the select and it would process the request. So it would be kind of the integration is in a fashion that Blender would not block. So Python client would so this is a client server architecture. So Python client would be able to send so many script files, like here we are sending a cube add, and cube delete. So it is a kind of concatenating all three requests in a string, and then it is passing these three scripts to the this string to the Python server, and Python server execute script one by one. But after execution of one script, then it is going back to the event loop, and then it is coming back, then it is executing another, and then executing another. So this is the architecture so that we are kind of incorporating, and with this architecture the GUI what we are seeing in the Blender would be kind of it would be like interactive, so it should be always be happening. So that is the idea. Okay, so server would be connected from the client, and so it would be executed. So we can see the execution, like there is a GIF image that is provided. So I can click on the GIF image, and we can we can see that how so this is the default what we see in the when we open the Blender. So at that time we see a default cube. So uh, there is a default cube, then one more cube is added, and then one more cube is added, and then finally the default cube is deleted. So there are 3 Python scripts that are getting executed. So in this scenario, okay, so we have also placed the video of the complete stuff. So how it happens, so how to execute the scripts. So it's like okay. So first we need to execute the Blender in one terminal with -python and the Blender server code. So this would start the Blender. Okay. So once Blender is started from the console application, then I have in another console where I'll execute the client application. So server is started in the Blender. Okay, so server has been started now. So this is everything is from the article. So in the article we have the video link. Now someone has to go to the another console. So 2 consoles we are opening, and in this console, so the server socket has started and it is waiting for the connection. And now the client we will execute in another terminal. So Blender client, and we'll pass all the script that we want to execute. So first cube add in the y direction, then cube add in the x direction, and then cube delete. Now things will happen in asynchronous way. So the graphics GUI on the Blender, it would keep changing. Now it is executing, the server is executing the request, and we will see that one cube will get added, and then so it is reflecting the moment it is happening. So it's not blocking. So that is the idea of Python integration with the Blender, that Python should run externally, and whatever is happening immediately it should be updated. So that is the concept. So client is done and server is also done. Okay, so that is the the video that we have placed. So client application connect to the server, passes the request as a string, and then server one by one it executes, but it goes back to the event loop after each execution. Okay, so we have pasted the complete code. So it can be seen as client code at the beginning, and then followed by the server code. So that is available. So we started with solution, what solution we have placed, and then designing. So it is purely event based, and then experimental output. In that we have placed the source code, and then how it happens, and then video and the zip file, and then cube addition and deletion source code also we have pasted, and how it works, so that we have placed, and further enhancement. So this the viewers they can kind of request us for the further enhancement, like there can be IDE, and in the IDE there can be execute button. So if someone is writing code, Python code, then there can be a context menu and he can just click on the execute, or he would go in the toolbar button and he would click on the execute, and there would be a kind of we can see like okay, so there would be a separate docket window, and there it would show the status, what's going on. So it's quite handy, means one small IDE and typing in the code and just say execute, and then it would execute at the Blender. Okay, so further reading can happen with the Unix and networking based books. Okay, so that is the idea of the article. So it's available now. So where we mention the problem, scenario, solution, and external references where it can be studied. It is available. These solutions means in a kind of little bookish way. And then designing. So in designing we are using select, and we are using event based mechanism. And then we have a Blender, and then we have a client code and server code. Server code executes at the Blender, and then we type get the Blender from the command line in one console, and then client execute the Python script as command line, and then it sends to the server and things get executed. We have the GUI, we have the video for all the execution, then we have the GIF also that can be seen on the browser itself, and then whatever addition and deletion the Python code we have done, that we have played, how it works, that we have shown, and further enhancements. So the viewer can go for the further enhancement, they can contact us. Okay, so that is the idea. Okay, so it can be fetched at our newly created medium, so that is minhinc.medium.com or medium.com @ minhinc.